Dear friends, welcome to the series of When I Cannot Pray Talks, episode 20th. In the last episode, we discussed on how to spiritualize the sense of sight or seeing. Today, we try to focus our attention on spiritualizing our hearing. We hear so many things in our lives. We hear to people who talk to us. We hear the things that happen around us in nature. And we hear music, we hear talks, we hear sometimes people talking in a marketplace, and millions of things that enter to our mind through hearing. But there are two things we have to consider. When we are not able to pray, we must understand that prayer is not just saying things to God, but it has a lot to do with listening to God. That's why in the first talk, When I Cannot Pray series, I had made a reflection on Prophet Elijah. Prophet Elijah was at Mount Horeb. He was witnessing the glory and power of God. There was a powerful wind splitting the stones, and there was fire, there was the earthquake, and God was not there. And there was a still noise of silence. Noise of silence, or sound of silence. So I had explained to you, God speaks to us in the depth of our hearts in that silence. But we need to listen carefully. We need to listen. It is not just hearing, but listening. St. James says in his letter, chapter 1, verses 19 to 27, it is not just hearing the word of God, but we should be the doers of the word of God. We cannot just hear, but we must be able to practically live the word of God that we have listened to. Very important aspect of prayer. Prayer happens mostly when we listen to the word of God. Now, we hear so many things in our lives. According to St. John of the Cross, book 3, chapter 25, paragraph 3, he says that when we take joy in our hearing, we hear so many things. When people talk to us, it can distract our imagination, and we can have the feelings of envy, we can have a feeling of jealousy, and then we can also begin to gossip, because that has entered into our hearts, into our ears. And that's a very important thing that St. John of the Cross says, that when we begin to analyze everything that we hear in our daily lives, then we are distracted. And there are feelings of all kinds, that means envy, jealousy, the spirit of gossip, etc. And St. Paul, in his letter to Romans chapter 10, verses 14 to 17, he says, how can we believe in him without first hearing about him? So here we need to understand that faith enters into us through our ears. And then we might ask a question, how the deaf people could hear about the faith. They can see, they can understand sign language, and how they can grasp the important aspects of our faith. So we need to first hear him. God speaks to us all the time. And today I invite you to train the sense of hearing as a preparation for our prayer. Prayer, as I said, is listening to God in our daily lives. Now, in order that we may listen to God during prayer, during the day we must be able to train our hearing, or rather, I would say, in other words, to spiritualize the sense of hearing. We have this beautiful nature around us. In some places, perhaps you are living in a city, but doesn't matter. It has also a part of nature. That means you look at the sky, you can look at the sun, you can look at the clouds, and at night you can look at the stars, wherever you are in the city. But those people who live in the countryside, in the villages and towns, certainly they have more access to nature. There are many things happening. Someone said that nature is the producer, the broadcaster, and the performer, and we are the listeners. How is that? Just go for a walk meditatively. I wouldn't say the meditative walk. No, you just go for a walk without entertaining lots of thoughts in your mind. Put a stop to that chatter that happens in our mind, and then just listen to nature. The ruffling of the leaves, the chirping of birds, and when there is a wind, there is the noise that is created by the trees, by the branches, by the leaves. You can just listen to various noises that are produced by nature. A flowing river that produces a kind of nice melody. We can listen to so many birds chirping around us when we go out in the wilderness, in a park or wherever. When we are capable of training our hearing, then we are focused, we become aware. That awareness is very important. We become conscious that we are walking, at the same time we are listening to the noises, the sounds around us, and that brings us to a kind of recollection. And when we are habituated doing that every day, then we are capable of concentrating during our prayer time. This is a very important aspect of prayer. Very often, why are we not able to pray? What is the problem we face in our prayer? It is mainly because we are so used to understand prayer as saying so many things to God. We have to continuously say and ask and say, and prayer of petition and repeated prayers. I am not against them, as I told you earlier. Whether it is the recitation of rosary or angelos or novenas or litanies, they are very good, they are wonderful. If we can give attention to those words that we utter during our prayer time, that is good. Listening, even when we do our vocal prayers, we need to listen to the words, understand the words, and grasp the meaning and bring that meaning to our heart. Then our prayer becomes really powerful. Then our prayer becomes fruitful too. Now there is a beautiful incident in the Old Testament, the book of Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 3 verses 2 to 9. Little Samuel was sleeping in the temple. He was accompanied by Eli. They were sleeping in different places in the temple. And at night, God calls Samuel, 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 Samuel. And where does he go? He just hears and goes to Eli. Did you call me? And Eli says, no, I have not called you. At the third time, Eli realizes that it is God who is calling him. And therefore, he trains Samuel to respond to God. Tell to God, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And at the fourth time, when God called Samuel, Samuel was able to listen and say to God, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." Listening is so important for our prayer. Therefore, dear friends, as we are in this movement towards understanding prayer, this journey of understanding prayer, when we are not able to pray, we need to make every effort to understand what is prayer. So today, another aspect of prayer that I highlight here is listening to God. And therefore we need to train our hearing during the day, focusing our attention, listening with full awareness whatever happens around us. Very often when we are in conversation with the other people, when we have a discussion, what happens is, before really listening to others, we prepare a kind of defense in our mind. We don't listen to the other guy. We do not actually understand what that person says. We in a superficial way, in a shallow way, understand what that person says, and at the same time, when that person speaks to us, we prepare a kind of defense. That is not listening. That is hearing. And it's a partial hearing. So we are very keen on defending ourselves. We are very keen on giving our opinion. We are very keen on giving our suggestions. We concentrate on that rather than listen to what that person is telling us. This is a tragedy very often in our listening. When we focus our attention and listen fully, carefully, with concentration and focus and awareness, lots of things can happen. We can change our views. We can contribute certainly to our discussion in a meaningful way, in a powerful way, enriching way. That is called listening. And we need to train constantly to listen. And when we train to listen to nature, to other people, then a miracle happens. Then we are able to listen to the tiny voice, the small voice of God in the depth of our heart. And there sparks the real prayer. When we really listen, prayer happens. There's a beautiful parable in the New Testament of the two sons. Jesus tells these two sons of a father. The father asks the older son to go to the field and work, and he says no. And then he changes his mind and goes to work. The second one says, "Yes, sir," but he does not go to work. Who did the will of their father? The first one. Yes, when we listen, we discern, we decide, and we develop that intimacy with God. Listening purposefully, carefully, powerfully, and with focus and attention. And that will certainly help our prayer life. God bless you.